Well, welcome to another episode of the Spurs Rewind. I'm your host, Joe Garcia, and I'm going to be joined here by my co-host, the lovely Vickie Vix. Hey, Vickie.
Hey, hello.
And the one and only Josh Pardes.
How's it going?
It's going good. And I said your name right this time, Josh.
Yeah, you got it. I think you got it down.
Had to go and
Gonna be
use my Latino ancestry, to kind of roll my R, get that thing going. But we're going to dive in here and talk about some stuff, man. And it's going to be kind of a tough, last 7 games for Spurs fans. We were privy to the San Antonio Spurs loss to the Utah Jazz last night by a final score of 94-126. Right now, the Spurs find themselves in the midst of a 5-game losing streak. And they were once down by, I believe it was 41 points to the Jazz. And then when you look and you're looking at the game summary, like I'm looking at it right now on NBA.com, and I was looking at it last night as well. There were big discrepancies there with points in the paint, bench points. But at the end of the day, when all was said and done and the game was over, the discrepancy wasn't that bad as far as points in the paint. Bench points, Utah's bench outscored the Spurs 62-53. That was a bigger margin earlier in the game. But, Coach
Clarkson,
yeah, Coach Pop went ahead and let the young guys get some run out there. So they entertained, they got some minutes and get some experience out there. But really, the Jazz just ran the Spurs out of the gym, out of the Vivint Center that they play in. Fast break points, 25-6. Ouch. There was no transition defense to speak of, and that was before Pop put in the young guns. The starters just looked tired, and it's one of those things that happens to everybody. It's a long season, and it's a tasking schedule that they have in front of them. So these players they're just exhausted, and you can even see by looking at the final scores, like looking at the final box stats and all that. The Spurs, they just weren't feeling it, man, at all from beyond the arc. They were 7 of 23, good enough for 30.4% from beyond the arc. That was horrid. While the Jazz, they just couldn't miss a shot from beyond the arc. And again, once again, the Spurs, they just let the Jazz hit a lot of uncontested threes. The Jazz went and shot 18 of 41 from beyond the arc, good for 43.9%. And that was kind of your game between that and the fast break points. That's all she wrote, So I was kind of telling you guys before we came on and started speaking about, talking about the Spurs, that this team just kind of looks dejected in a way. I just think that they're just mentally and physically tasked. It's going to be really hard for them to close out this season. And I don't know if they're going to win another game. That's the thing. It would be ironic if they finish the season without winning a single game. I hope that does not happen. I don't wish that on them. But given all these things that I just said, Vickie, kind of pull me off the ledge. Is there a glimmer of hope? I mean, what would I need to do? Do I need to light my prayer candle? What's going on?
I think there's hope still. I don't know how many, but I don't think they're going to lose all the way out the rest of this season.
You want to put some money on
that? What?
Said you want to put some money on that?
I'll take you up on that.
You want the over-under?
I really think they're going to win. They're in a slump right now, and they're seeing a lot of. It's going to be tough. The rest of the schedule is really tough, but there have been players being held out for rest and all this. So I think that maybe the coaching staff, Pop, is kind of seeing that it's a potential they're not going to make the plan. And it's sort of like maybe he's going toward that same mentality that he did in the bubble of it's time to give the other guys playing time, those that don't get it for whatever reason throughout the season. So I think we're getting to see that. Eventually, I think that maybe those less experienced players will gel a little bit better. I think they've been close too. They've had opportunities, not the last few games. They've been pretty, bad. But I think that, there's been glimmers of hope throughout their games, and just seeing, some of the stuff that they're doing. They can't all be completely dejected. I think that, Trey Jones yesterday had some really, great sparkly moments that everybody kind of caught on to. And, there's been stuff from Luka. A lot of the guys here and there are starting to get a little bit more opportunity. And I think that's where the benefit is going to come into this. So I hope they can win. I do think we'll see a few more wins before the season ends.
All right, I'm going to hold you to that, Vickie, because I got no faith in this team right now after what I've seen from them.
Oh,
no. Some of these guys, some of these vets look like they're ready for the glue factory,
Oh, God.
So, Josh, what do you got to tell us, man? What was your take on this whole thing?
I mean, there's good and bad that I have to say. I'm not going to say they're going to go 0-7. I feel like that's a little much. I think you're going a lot based on these last two games. And you're talking about the Jazz, who I don't know why it's impossible to stop Bogdanovic, Clarkson, and Ingles from getting in the paint. They don't seem like they're not like Harden and Durant, but they look like that when they play the Spurs. And I think Ingles he has like the highest true shooting percentage in the league or something. So it's like it's not a fluke that they beat the crap out of the Spurs twice. It's recency. It's like, okay, they look that bad because the Jazz are that good also. And there were 2 overtime games in this streak that they really had a chance. They really had no business being in a Sixers game at all. I don't know how they were even close in that. When I was at that game, I was like, let's just get this over with and move on. And then they went into overtime. Of course, they came up short. I don't see them going 0-7 in the last few games here. They have Sacramento. Sacramento's kind of in the same boat as San Antonio. Like, you never know which way they're going to play.
Yeah, but Sacramento has given the Spurs fits. That's one of my biggest fears with this team.
I mean, who hasn't?
Yeah.
It's just about if the Spurs can bring it, then. And right now they're running on fumes, and I feel like that's probably going to be the case. But there's going to be a couple nights here where DeJounte goes off, or who else do we have anymore? DeRozan goes off.
Don't forget, you got your vets, Patty Mills and Rudy Gay, who look like they're about ready for the glue factory already, man. We've all kind of been calling for them to take a step back for a while now anyways. So we'll see. Maybe 1 or 2 wins here and there in the last 7. Probably the most I could predict at this point. Is that enough for the play-in? I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if that's good or bad in this situation, but we'll see soon. The thing is it's the way that they lose, especially when they could win these games that they lost in overtime. I think one of the most ejecting games that I've seen this season had to be the game against the Celtics. The Spurs were once up by 32 points. How in the world do you let a Boston Celtics team come back in this game and then beat you in overtime? At some point, like I was telling you in one of the last episodes too, there has to be some type of accountability at some point. Players have to look at each other and start holding each other accountable. There's a lack of communication out there, and there's just a lack of that want to win, that attitude that you need to have in order to close out games. This team just kind of at times, and I attribute it to just, both fatigue and also, we have a lot of young faces on this team, and you can attribute that to inexperience at times. But at some point during the season, that all has to go out the window. There's no excuses. You have to find ways to win. Every team is in the same boat. Every team is playing a lot of games, and you're going and you're traveling and you're going to different cities on different nights. You have 3, 4, 5 games that are really close together. You have back-to-backs. I mean, it becomes a daunting task for all teams, not just the Spurs. But for whatever reason, this team just seems like they just don't have it. They're missing something. And I don't know what that something is. At this point, we had floor generals in the past, when we were in the championship runs. This team, I think is still searching for their identity, and I don't know who's going to step up and be that leader. We lean a lot, I think, on the vets, to kind of be that vocal presence, in Patty Mills. At times it looks like they kind of look to him a little bit. But one of these new guys is going to have to step up and say, this is my team. I'm going to put them on my back and we're going to win. I have yet to see that happen. Who do you think that could be, Josh?
So I wouldn't expect that to happen this season as far as
no.
a young person. And that's fine. I mean, it's a process. Kind of a preview of what I will be writing about soon. I was actually reading today about somebody interviewed, I think it was Basketball News or someone. They talked to Derrick White. I haven't really heard from him since the injury. And he kind of mentioned that Coach Pop has been more on him about being a leader, like a vocal leader, which maybe indicates, I mean, I'm not going to start anything here, but maybe indicates he's the go-to guy of the future, with DeMar likely leaving. So I really think Derrick is the one that's going to be in that role next season. Obviously it's kind of too late, and I've already kind of accepted that. I mean, maybe a play-in game or two is the max. I'll be surprised if anything else happens. But it has to be Derrick White. It's not like he's an old guy. He hasn't even had, real opportunities without these injuries that's happening to him. So it's got to be Derrick.
Yeah, we have a comment here from a viewer who's watching via YouTube, and it says his name is Tyler Menenhold, and he says, I want to see more Devin, Luka plus Lonnie. DeJounte needs to step it up. He's not consistent enough of a leader that our team desperately needs. At one point, I thought it was going to be DeJounte that was going to step up into that leadership role. He was kind of saying the right things and even talked with the media and said, hey, I want to be a vocal leader out there on the court. And that has yet to transpire. He talked a good game in the press conference post game, but when you're in the heat of a battle, he kind of goes MIA a bit, in that regards. If you want to be a leader, be vocal out there in the court. Don't go and say it post game, show it. That's what I think some of the coaching staff is waiting for. They're waiting for somebody to step up. So, Vickie, who do you think that person could be?
I agree with Josh 100%. I think it has to be Derrick White. He, of the young guys, is the oldest. He's the most experienced, and he just shows, I think he does show that level of maturity on the court. And you do see him, putting his arm around a guy and telling them, be here, be there. He's just got that presence when he's on the court. I don't think DeJounte doesn't have it, but I think he's still developing it because he's younger, still trying to fit into that really important role that he's been given. So I do see them both as having the potential. Derrick more, just because I do think Derrick has a little bit better court vision. I think if I wanted to trust someone with the Spurs, it would be Derrick White. Yeah, so I definitely would say Derrick.
Vickie was having a conversation with herself. She's like, do I want to or do I not want to? Yeah, I do.
I got to say about DeJounte, yeah, I don't agree that he doesn't have it. I think he does, and I think it's in flashes. I do agree he's not as consistent, but this season he's been his most consistent that he's ever had.
Yeah.
So he does have it. I've literally seen DeJounte push Bryn Forbes into defensive position when he's not, which is, I mean, you could see that happening because Forbes was never in position.
Good old barbecue. What was my nickname for Bryn Forbes? Barbecue.
Yeah, so DeJounte has that, and you'll see him gets frustrated on the court, kind of like DeMar does whenever somebody misses an assignment or they miss their rotation or they switch wrong. He has a lot of that there. He's vocal with it. I don't see him not being vocal enough. Maybe there are some games where he just isn't there, and that's fair.
Yeah, that's what
again,
I'm talking
he's
about.
young, and I'm hoping for that. I don't expect it. And, he's not Tony Parker. He's not gonna just like all of a sudden be, lead us to the promised land or anything. It's going to take some time. I know people are getting impatient, but that's what you have with the young team. That's what's going to happen.
And, now that you say that, Josh, too, I started thinking somebody who I've noticed doing that on the court, and he's super young, not expecting it completely of him yet, but Keldon Johnson, I think, has the potential to also be that because he's also very smart on the court. He knows where everybody should be at all times. And you've seen him telling people where they need to be. They're out of position. I think maybe, they're like, what, you're a rookie, but or basically a rookie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he could develop into that too. I think the Spurs have so many bright prospects that somebody's going to develop into it, or more than one, which is hopefully the case.
We have another comment from our good friend Rudy Campos Jr. He's the host of Sweep the League podcast and also a Sports Time radio show. It comes out at 9:30 a.m. The Answers on Sundays. He says this team doesn't have a leader. He goes, as much as I love the young core, we have nobody. He goes, we have nobody has the leadership quality we have seen in the past with the Spurs greats. It's not a bad thing, but fans can expect something from players who have been in our system for years already. So, that's
can't
his
really
observation.
disagree. Yeah,
it's his observation, and I kind of agree at this point. The team looks lost at times. There's no real leadership out there on the court. Like you said, you see glimpses of maybe somebody wanting to be that person, but it kind of has to develop. It hasn't developed yet. And that's why at times this Spurs team just looks lost, especially in games like the one at Boston where you have a big lead and you just can't sustain it. It's like they just don't know how to close out games. And that's something you have to learn, and you have to go through adversity in order to get better. And they're going through it right now, and I think that's the toughest thing as a Spurs fan, a new Spurs fan at that, new generation Spurs fan. They only known success. They haven't been there for the team's trials and tribulations from being back in the 80s, late 80s, even in the 90s, 90, 91, going through those fits. There's a lot of heartache there. There was a lot of missed opportunities, but again, the team needs to go through that. And once again, they'll be there, but it's going to be a process. And I think people just need to be patient, because it seems funny how history kind of repeats itself. Every NBA team, goes through these types of situations. The Spurs are just going through theirs right now, and it's in front of everybody, and fans are just upset every time the Spurs win or lose. Spurs Twitter just wants to burn to the ground.
There's a great quote that you just reminded me of from Draymond Green, of all people, who's not really known for saying wise things. But I kind of had research when I was researching Duncan quotes, and he had one back when the Warriors were struggling, just recently, because they had their big run. And he said, they asked him about rebuilding, and he said, everybody goes through it except Tim Duncan. So every person, every fan, every team has to go through this phase, and that's what the Spurs are going through now that Duncan's gone and everyone's gone.
And the ironic thing is, for example, Patty Mills is one of the OGs from the 2014 Spurs run, when they won their last championship. Sooner or later, he's going to wind up either walking away from the team. We're going to lose him in free agency, or the Spurs might just decide to go in a different direction. Once that shoe drops, it's like you're letting go of all the attachments you had to the past. We're
just Coach Pop. That's it.
Well, that's the last shoe to drop, and I think Spurs fans know that time's coming soon, and that's why I always say every time I have a podcast or even come and talk with you guys, you kind of got to appreciate the time that he has right now, and you got to really savor every game and every minute that he's out there on the court, because I think much like Timmy, when he's done, he's not going to have like a farewell tour. He's just going to say, all right, I'm done. It's been a good run. I'm out. And he's not going to give anybody an opportunity to bid him farewell. He's going to go out on his own terms, and he deserves that, so you could be seeing the last couple games as Coach Pop, as the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs. We just never know. So savor every game. But I also wanted to talk about an article you wrote, Josh, and you were talking about how the play-in tourney can kind of affect the Spurs' chances as far as the draft goes. If they win, how is that going to affect, if they wind up going and, let's say, besting the number 9 seed and actually defeating the loser between the 7th and 8th to get that 8th spot. Would that hurt their chances? Because a lot of Spurs fans seem confused and they don't want the Spurs to win because they said it's going to hurt our draft chances. And the rest of the
Right.
fans are like, let's just tank the rest of the season. We'll get a higher pick. So shed some light on this subject for us.
Yeah, and regarding that last point, I saw Express News' Jeff McDonald was mentioning that earlier. Even if they lose out, they still might make it into the play-in tournament. So what else can they do? You want them to just they can't add more losses than 7. But either way, there's only if they make the playoffs will it have a significant difference in the draft, like the lottery process, because they won't be in the draft lottery selection group. Because if you make the playoffs, even if let's say you're 10th, but you somehow sneak into 8th because you win those 2 games, then you're not going to be in those top 14. So you're not going to have a chance to move up, which is what I was writing about. If you do the play-in tournament, if you win 1 game and then you lose the second to the higher seed, you're still throwing into the lottery. So it's like, okay. Same if you just lose the first play-in tournament. You still make it as a 10th seed, but you lose the first one, you're just thrown into the lottery. It's only if you take over 8th seed is that you're going to get a better position, or you're going to get the worse position with the draft because you're not going to be in the lottery. So I don't know if there's anything the NBA has specified as far as, let's say you win 1 play-in and then you lose. Do you have a slightly worse chance of getting, I don't think that's available. I think Paul's kind of mentioned that on Spurscast before. I have to double check, or I haven't seen anything like that.
Yeah.
I have seen some people just speculate, just random commenters being like, oh no, it's this way. I'm like, well, what's your source? And there's nothing. So
yeah, there's really no hard factual data. It's all based on numbers that we can actually see right now. Unfortunately, the NBA doesn't really release all those analytics when it comes to the NBA draft. Probably not to so teams won't have an inside track on what to do.
Yeah.
So Vickie, what do you think? What does your heart tell you? Do you want the Spurs to win out, or would you rather they just tank?
No, I'm never ever a tank person. I hate the idea of losing, like, ever. So I think, like, even if they lose but they try their hardest, I will be 100% happier than if they try to lose and then end up in the same position. So yeah, I'm really hoping that they just try, and it's an opportunity, like we've been saying, for other guys, the younger guys, to get their time, their practice. If they go out there being told, okay, we don't need to win, then they're not going to try. They're not going to learn. They're not going to push as hard as they should be to get the experience that they need moving forward. So I think that, if you give these young guys the opportunity, like, it's up to you whether we make it or not, then you're going to give them that experience that they need when they do make the playoffs in the future.
Yeah. So we're just going to have a wait and see attitude, see what happens with this team, because you really don't know what to think of them. They're just so unpredictable. You never know what team is going to show up. And this Spurs team, when they're firing on all cylinders and you have that mixture of your veterans and the younger guys, they're exciting to watch. And we had some exciting moments in yesterday's defeat. Trey Jones, for example, had a really stellar game. Another favorite that everybody likes too is Luka Samanic. He was our high scorer. He had like 15 points on the night. Drew Eubanks, coming off the bench, Energizer Bunny, had 14 points. Then another fan favorite here, Devin Vassell. He had a good little night there, 30 minutes, 36 seconds out on the court, 14 points. I like this kid. I think he has the makings of somebody who can be a great two-way player. He plays great defense. He's a great scorer, has a great shot, can shoot the ball from beyond the arc, good mid-range game, really high basketball IQ, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. I got to say, I thought he was a very special player when I first saw him get on the court and put some productive minutes in and actually performed well. So I've had my eye on this kid ever since, and of course, you look at the Mustang, Keldon Johnson, so he had 26 minutes, 10 seconds. He only had 6 points, but it was one of those nights you're playing one of the better teams and they know what he can do. So they're going to try to stop him. They're going to try to make
Rudy
somebody else
Gobert,
beat us,
man. How are you going to drive against that? Like,
that dude is big, man. But the way that you go and score against a big guy, and it's counterintuitive. You got to get close up into their body. You got to get into their chest, and then you have to be strong enough to still get your shot off. Easier said than done, So it's a skill that you have to learn over, years of playing in the NBA. These younger players are still kind of learning, like Keldon is. He has the strength to finish that shot, though. So I'd like to see him take it into Rudy Gobert's chest, initiate the contact, and then still get the shot up, because more than not, he's going to get the respect of the refs, and he'll probably either get an and one opportunity or go to the charity stripe, maybe get an easy 2 points, So
you want to put money on that?
I'm just saying. That's how you get respect, man. You got to go in there and you got to be physical.
I would like to see him try. It's just Gobert is just crazy in the man. But
oh yeah, man. Rudy Gobert.
I believe Keldon can. It's just stuff.
He can if he wants to, and that's the thing. They're going to get experience, as they play more and more games. They'll learn things, so we can't be too hard on them at this point. It is what it is. The season's almost over. I'm looking forward to vacation. It's been a long year.
You talked yourself off the ledge by the end of the episodes.
Yeah, I'm ready for vacation. I'm already thinking about the beach.
The Spurs might be too.
Yeah, the beach and a beer. So on that note, let's go ahead and go around the horn here so we can go ahead and bring this episode to a close. So Josh, where can they follow you on social media, and what do you got working on right now?
I am at Josh810. Got a lot in the works right now. If you go to my Twitter, I have Duncan Week coming up, Tim Duncan Week. It's going to be a whole week of Tim Duncan articles. We actually talked about it yesterday. I have the stream available on my profile. If you just kind of go down my timeline, you'll see that. We talked about Tim, our favorite memories, all the things I'll be writing about him. The schedule is out, and it's going to be starting on Sunday morning. You'll see the first article of 8. So yeah, Josh810.
Yep. And like, instead of Shark Week, it's going to be Timmy Week.
Yeah. Timmy Week.
Timmy Week. All right. And Vickie, where can they follow you on social media?
On Twitter, also at the Vickie Vix, which is TheVickieVix.
I'm going to have to make like a lower third or something so I can just say, you can follow Vickie and Josh here, so we don't have to keep saying it all the time, right?
I think we could put our names in some way, maybe on the.
Yeah,
we'll look at it.
I'll put that up there. I'll figure a way to do it. So you can also follow me at Two Shots Podcast, all spelled out, TWO, Two Shots Podcast. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and the Twitters. So you can go ahead and interact with all of us and talk sports and whatever else you want to talk to us about. So for Josh Pardes and Vickie Vix, I'm Joe Garcia. Thank you guys for watching another episode of the Spurs Rewind. And make sure you go check out projectspurs.com for all your latest San Antonio Spurs news. So without further ado, that's about all the time we have for today. So spread the love, stop the hate, be kind. We're out. Peace.